Okay, a lot to get to, and CNN political commentators Dave Jacobson and John Thomas are with us, alongside the Professor of Political Science at Cypress College, Peter Mathews. Good to have all of you for what will be, pretty lengthy discussion. Okay, Peter, first to you. President Obama was out campaigning for Democrats, but what could be the reason for George W. Bush to end almost a decade of staying silent, of staying out of the political fray, of not criticizing, a sitting president? What could be a reason that he's come forward at this point in time?
Well, two things. One, of course, is the country itself, and he sees the country in such danger from some of the actions of the present president, but also the party, the Republican Party, of which George Bush still has a lot of affection for, I'm sure. He doesn't want that to be destroyed by this president. And one more thing, President Obama talked about the example that America sets. The world looks to America for a certain type of thinking and culture and political culture. It's called soft power. Professor Joseph Knight talked about it from Harvard. Soft power is the type of influence that we have in the world based on our example, on our ideals, and the world looks up to us. And that lessens the need for just hard power, just pure military power, when you have a large amount of soft power. And I think Donald Trump has been squandering our soft power to a certain extent, the way he's doing things.
Okay, well, George W. Bush drafted that speech himself. He clearly had a lot to say, especially about the last 9 months. Listen to this.
Bigotry seems emboldened. Our politics seems more vulnerable to conspiracy theories and outright fabrication. We've seen our discourse degraded by casual cruelty. At times, it can seem like the forces pulling us apart are stronger than the forces binding us together. Argument turns too easily into animosity. Disagreement escalates into dehumanization.
John, to be fair, the politics of division did not start with President Trump. The criticism, though, is that his words and his actions have made those divisions much deeper, turned them into chasms, and he is benefiting from it politically.
Well, many people argue that the reason George Bush got pummeled in his second term in his approval ratings and when we lost the election of Barack Obama is because George Bush never fought back against the liberal media, the Democratic tax, and if he had been a little bit more like Trump in terms of not letting people bully him around, that we would have won in 2008 and 2012. So it's clear that President Bush, number one, has a different perspective on how you should be a leader. There's no question about that. But also, look, the Republican Party, there was a referendum on the Bush family and the Bush legacy when Jeb Bush ran for the Republican nomination in 2016, and I think Republicans felt pretty clearly that they're ready to move beyond George Bush's style of leadership.
But that doesn't rule out the president's right to speak out, as he did on Thursday.
And he has a complete right to do that. We also have a right not to agree with him.
I guess Democrats are grateful that, Republicans are standing up. Obviously, we disagree with them on policy, but I think it's incumbent upon Republican leaders like John McCain, George Bush, Mitt Romney, Jeff Flake, a number of other leaders. Yeah, but, these are folks who fundamentally believe in the ideals of our country, and we may disagree on policy and on politics, but on the basic, ideas of common decency, optimistic views of the future. I mean, that's what we can agree on. And Donald Trump has a very negative worldview. Everything is bad and wrong, and he's the only person that can save us. And I think that's the disconnect between what you see with Republicans who have served in office and Democrats and Donald Trump. It's almost like he's creating his own party. And I think that's the
Bush
difference.
also spoke out against Trump's immigration policies. There's a huge division.
Yeah, he started the speech in Spanish, which was notable.
Right.
Okay, a former Bush White House advisor, Peter Werner, helped with the speech, even though President Bush drafted it. Werner told the New York Times that President Bush is not looking for a fight with Donald Trump, but he added this: there's enough political food fighting going on. He doesn't want to be part of that. He's not part of that. What we need is people with some authority in American life to articulate a vision of the common good and the moral good and a vision of America. So, Peter, to you, President Bush may not want to fight, but he may not have any choice in this. President Trump is a well-known counterpuncher.
Absolutely. I think what Peter said in that quote there was absolutely correct, that President Bush is trying to create a vision of unity and of understanding between all of America, because we're part of the country. And yet, Donald Trump is probably not going to let President Bush get away with what he said, because, like you said, he counterpunches very well, and Trump can't help himself when he decides to counterpunch. It's almost a natural inclination for him. So I'm just waiting to see what he's going to say tomorrow in his early tweets.
Absolutely. John, this does go to this civil war that's been ongoing within the Republican Party for quite some time, and it does seem like they've brought out, the big guns. Where does this all end up?
I think what you're just seeing is fault lines between the establishment Republicans, the never Trump class that just can't take it. And I think it was remarkable that President Bush did speak out today, because he bit his tongue when Barack Obama was president. He disagreed with everything that president did. He's bit his tongue pretty much through the election cycle, even though his brother was on the ballot. So this was the establishment's, I feel like, their final punch to try to bring things back to where they want to. I don't think they're going to prevail. The Republican Party has fundamentally shifted, and they hate that swamp.
Oftentimes, former presidents are sort of above the fray when it comes to politics sometimes, and I think this was one of those moments. And I think it's going to have an impact in the 2018 election, particularly, perhaps not with the Trump voter, right? The 38% of Americans who approve of President Trump's performance, they're going to stick with him. But when it comes to independent voters, more establishment Republican voters, perhaps Reagan Democrats who previously voted for Barack Obama but then peeled away to Donald Trump, I think it's going to have an impact and an effect on the 2018 election with those folks, and that could really, give Democrats a leg up when it comes to potentially taking back the House.
Well, I'd love to see Democrats run on George Bush. That would be great.
Well, I think it's the broader message of both presidents, both political parties. It sends
occupying the middle and being centrist and all that kind of stuff. President Obama was out. If you want to talk about elections, the Democrats still have this problem that Barack Obama is incredibly popular. Everyone loved him. They're chanting his name. That doesn't tend to translate down ticket. Even so, he did at this campaign rally. He talked about the events in Charlottesville and about white nationalism. Listen to this.
We saw what happened in Charlottesville, but we also saw what happened after Charlottesville, when the biggest gatherings of all rejected fear and rejected hate, and the decency and goodwill of the American people came out. That's how we rise. We don't rise up by repeating the past. We rise up by learning from the past.
So, Joe, I'm trying to put my finger on how Barack Obama's remarks after the violence in Charlottesville were different to President Trump's remarks after the violence in Charlottesville. How would you describe it?
Well, it's also easy to look back in hindsight and criticize the president. He could have been smoother in his actions, there's no doubt about it. But look, the president is playing partisan politics at a campaign rally in, what was that, New Jersey, for a Democrat?
You see New Jersey or Virginia?
Yeah, Virginia. Look, President Obama still remains popular. I think the biggest thing is, though, the electorate doesn't seem to follow him besides giving him re-election. He had massive losses in the House in 2010. And so, I mean, he can bark all he wants, and he's got to rile up his base, because Democrats have a base problem, too. They didn't turn out because they didn't like Hillary Clinton or the Democratic policies they're putting forth.
But I would also say that, Donald Trump was playing politics when he equated white supremacists with anti-white supremacist protesters. The fact is, Donald Trump emboldened the alternative right, the white supremacists, the neo-Nazis. That's part of his base. That's what propelled him to the White House. And at the end of the day, he didn't want to alienate those folks.
I want to ask Peter this question, though. Peter, what impact does it have when you have the President of the United States, in one sense, talking like Barack Obama did about the violence in Charlottesville, and compared to what you had with the current president, Donald Trump, talking about, blame to go round on both sides, some of these people are very fine people, that kind of thing. So what impact does that have on the country?
It was like day and night hearing the two different men's response to Charlottesville, with President Obama today just uplifting people and looking at the high ground and trying to get us to that point, the better angels of our nature. And I think he does a very good job doing that. President Trump is not a natural public speaker. You can tell that. And, he has to read, when he reads the teleprompter, he's not so bad. But when he goes off the cuff, it seems to me that he does not try to appeal to the highest angels of all our natures, but instead to his 35%, by the way, base. I'm not sure it's 38%. It's 35% more likely. And that's not going to get him reelected or cause the country to come together. I wish he would shift gears and try to unite the people with whatever talent he has. But Obama has a lot of talent in being able to do that, verbally especially. When it comes
Dave,
to speeches.
Sorry, Peter, but let's go to Dave. Do you think Donald Trump knows what the term "our better angels," appealing to our better angels. Do you think he understands what that's about?
I mean, I think it goes back to the idea that, like, Donald Trump doesn't think that he can do anything wrong. Like, Donald Trump thinks he's smarter than the generals. He's got the best brain in the world. I mean, the fact is, that's why he doesn't apologize, because he doesn't think that he's doing anything wrong. I mean, this is an egomaniac. And so that's the challenge that we're grappling with on a regular basis, and it's scary.
But it's easy to sit there from the podium and just give great soaring rhetoric and talk about when they go low, we go high. But in function, Democrats, are holding Donald Trump's bloody head on a magazine cover. I mean, what my point is, there is blame to go around on both sides. It's not as if it is singularly Donald Trump. It is a statement of our
but
politics.
Let's not forget, like, Donald Trump's campaign, like, started with the birther movement. He was the founder of it, essentially, and he is a guy who has sowed the seeds of discord in this country over the last 2 years.
Okay, well, on the flip side of all of this, the White House Chief of Staff John Kelly, he delivered this emotional and compelling defense of his boss against those accusations from a war widow who found his remarks to be insensitive during that condolence call. In particular, that her husband knew what he had signed up for, is what the president actually may or may not have said to Mrs. Johnson. General Kelly had a much kinder, gentler spin on he knew what he signed up for. This is what he said.
But let me tell you what my best friend, Joe Dunford, told me, because he was my casualty officer. He said, Kel, he was doing exactly what he wanted to do when he was killed. He knew what he was getting into by joining that 1%. He knew what the possibilities were, because we're at war. And when he died, in the 4 cases we're talking about in Niger, my son's case in Afghanistan, when he died, he was surrounded by the best men on this earth, his friends. That's what the president tried to say to 4 families the other day.
And Dave, with all due respect to General Kelly, who obviously has given his life and his family to service of the country, he's a soldier. He's been in combat. Those words he's probably heard before, and he can deal with those, I assume, a lot easier than a young pregnant mother of a couple of kids who's just found out that her husband is dead.
Especially, like, with a message coming from a president who deferred service 5 different times. Look, the fact is, John Kelly wouldn't have been up on that podium today, and we wouldn't be having this conversation if Donald Trump didn't politicize the issue about fallen service members and lying, essentially, from the Rose Garden, saying that Barack Obama never called fallen soldiers' families. Period.
No, he went up on the podium because a Democratic congresswoman from Florida who was in the car and heard the conversation decided to go public and pick a fight.
Okay, but he's still denying he said it. This is the thing.
Which is a mistake.
We had Kelly out there talking about I'm clarifying what he said, because just an hour or so ago we had this tweet. The fake news is going crazy with wacky Congresswoman Wilson, who was secretly on a very personal call and gave a total lie on content. Okay, so if the president's telling the truth, does that mean that John Kelly is not telling the truth? Where's this lie?
I mean, the president is making a mistake, whatever he's doing. I think Kelly's going out there, not because he was ordered to. I don't think anyone orders General Kelly what to do. I think he's there because of service. But Kelly's point to the press corps was he's disgusted that we're having this debate over a fallen soldier. These are private conversations, and whatever the president said, whether it was artful or inartful, is not for public debate.
I took the last word to Peter because General Kelly did want to make that point that the death of servicemen and women should be something which is above politics. And this is where we're at right now. It's not.
It certainly wasn't the way Donald Trump handled it. In fact, the words that General Kelly spoke about, his officer telling him about his son, were very different than what apparently Donald Trump said to the lady, the woman, the wife of the soldier, the pregnant mom, and this congresswoman, what she said. It's very different. He basically said, he knew what he was getting into. Very insensitively saying that. At the very least, the president should have been more compassionate, shown a bit more concern of this woman's feelings of losing her husband and having a posthumous child coming up. It's really amazing how the president overlooked all that and just came out and said, well, he knew what he was getting into, apparently. That's the kind of thing he said.
Didn't remember David Johnson's name.
Didn't remember his name even. He said, you're that guy. You're a guy. Yeah, it's just not right.
Okay, I think we'll leave it there. But Peter, Dave, and John, as always, good to see you. It's amazing how at the end of the week, all of these controversies end up being all about President Trump. Anyway.
Just the way he likes it.
Amazing.
Okay, thanks, guys.